Now, I've had a pretty decent Game Week 21 so far. I'm on 76 points and up to 38k overall. But all of my players have played, so the Man United game could impact things. And here are my transfer plans for Game Week 22. Right, so I'm going to start off just by going through my team as it's gotten on so far in Game Week 21. Like I said, 76 points and I'm up to 38k overall. Sells, Hall, Colwill, Robinson in my back line. Sells did well against Liverpool. Unfortunately, didn't keep the clean sheet. Obviously, that Jota goal basically as soon as he came onto the pitch. But one thing I would say, that game boded really well, in my opinion, for Nottingham Forest. They gave Liverpool, who have been undoubtedly the best team in the country so far this season, they gave Liverpool a really challenging game. And Sells played absolutely out of his skin in that game. He had a fantastic one. So not only have I got a goalkeeper playing for one of the best defenders in the league, I've got a goalkeeper that's playing out of his skin and making lots of saves. So I really like that. I really like Sells. Glad I bought him in a couple of weeks ago for Sanchez. Hall, clean sheet for him against Wolves. Very happy with that. I would have wanted, I can't really get too cocky with that. He's got 6 points, but could have got an attacking return, I would say, against Wolves, but it is what it is. Colwill, 1 pointer. It was very close for me between starting Aina or Colwill. In the end, I didn't want to go for double Forest defence against Liverpool. That felt like a bit too much. So I put Colwill in instead with Bournemouth. He got 1 point, but you can see there I've got another Bournemouth player who destroyed Colwill's score for the benefit of his. We'll talk about Semenyo in a second. Anthony Robinson with another 2 assists. I think that puts him on 9 assists now for the season. He's one of the top assisters in the entire of the league. But those 2 assists, if anyone saw the game, were not really assists. They were little short passes to a cross, and the cross ended up being the direct goal. There was a player that was trying to get on the end of the cross. I think it was it Raul Jimenez on both occasions? And he missed the ball. Well, he didn't miss the ball. He came close to connecting with the ball, which put off the keeper and allowed the cross to go in. And that was how Robinson got his 2 assists. Very jammy points from him, I'll admit, but I'll certainly take them. Rodgers, I keep saying I think he's the best cheap midfielder in the game, and he proved that again with an assist against Everton for the Watkins goal. Palmer with a goal, I'll take that. Bonus points as well. I think, in hindsight, I'll talk about captaincy in a second, actually, we'll move on. Semenyo, goal and assist for him. I think there was a period of time, sort of 4 or 5 game weeks ago, where I was really tempted to sell Semenyo. And since then, I think he's gotten 4 or 5 attacking returns in that time. Really happy with his 12-pointer against Chelsea. He looked great in that game. The only thing is the Bournemouth fixtures do get a little bit tough coming up. But this was the first tough one, you could argue, against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. And he came away with a goal and assist. So, yeah, probably just going to keep hold of him, to be completely honest with you. And, yeah, looking at those points, it's going to be really hard to sell him after that. Salah, one of, I think, 3 blanks this season. Maybe 3, maybe 2. Yeah, it is what it is. Forest, like I said, are genuinely one of the best teams in the league. I didn't captain him for that reason. Even though I did expect him to do better, I did feel like he had a relatively low ceiling in this game. I just felt Nottingham Forest would keep Liverpool pretty quiet. So, yeah, they did. Salah with a blank. I put the captaincy on Haaland, and in hindsight, I'd do it all over again. Looking at his ownership around my rank, right? I'm 38k overall. Not many people at all around my rank still have Haaland, right? He was 5% owned around my rank. So for me, looking at a week where Salah had Nottingham Forest, Palmer had Bournemouth, Isak was the one that, well, as you can see there, 2 goals and an assist for him. He was the one that was really close between him and Haaland for captaincy. But I went for the differential because I've held Haaland all this time. I think it was kind of almost a sign to captain him, the fact that I've held him this long, the fixtures for other players were tough. He, previous to the game, he was picking up some form as well. So, the writings felt like they were on the wall for a good Haaland captaincy. It didn't pay off, but thankfully, Palmer, probably the second, well, it wasn't the second most popular captain around my rank. It was Salah who blanked as well. So the damage was pretty minuscule. And it was Isak, the one that really performed. 2 goals and an assist for him. I'm very happy with those points. I think around my rank, he was literally just bang on 100% owned. So every return that he got did nothing to my rank. So it is what it is, really. Very happy to have him. I think he's probably the best striker in the league right now, isn't he? I think genuinely he has proven to be, well, he's playing at a higher level than Haaland, isn't he? And Newcastle in particular are just incredible at the moment. And yeah, Chris Wood, a goal against Liverpool. I'm waking up with Wood every morning and very happy about it. I had to get a Wood joke in. Yeah, really like Chris Wood, and I don't think there's any way he's going to leave my team. So what we'll do now, that's how my team got on in 21. We'll talk about my future plans next. All right, here is how things are looking for me ahead of Game Week 22. I've made one change already. Well, not a transfer as such, a substitute change. I put Aina in for Colwill. You can see there, the expected points actually favour Colwill. He's on 4 expected points, which is higher than Robinson and Lewis Hall. But, I mean, I don't see how they're not better, in my opinion. So I'm going to be benching most likely Colwill, starting with that back 4. There are defenders, namely Munoz, that I really want to get in my team. But being completely honest with you, I just can't justify it. I've had Aina in my team since he was 4.5 million. So selling him at 5.3 million is going to cost me a lot. I've had Robinson in my team also since I think he was about 4.6, 4.7 million. So getting rid of him is going to be tough. And likewise, Lewis Hall. They've all accumulated so much value in my team that I can't really justify selling them. In Colwill at 4.6, I don't have enough in the bank to change him for Munoz. And ultimately, Aina, Robinson and Hall is a perfectly fine starting back line for me. Salah, Palmer, Semenyo, Rodgers in my midfield. I'm a little bit put off by Rodgers playing Arsenal away, but he is just so good that I think against anyone, he's got a chance of getting returns. So I think, yeah, I'm going to stick with Rodgers. Semenyo's got Newcastle away, which I also think is another really tough fixture, to be honest. So my 2 cheap midfielders are up against it. And well, looking at Semenyo's fixtures, he's got Newcastle, Forest and Liverpool in his next 3. That's really tough, but I think I'm going to hold on to him for one more week because I'll talk about Haaland in a second, but I will eventually sell Erling Haaland probably next week, and that will allow me then to probably get rid of Semenyo and upgrade him to someone like Gordon or Mbeumo. And we'll talk about who I'm going to pick between those 2 in a second, but that's the most likely what I'll do there. But I think it just means I've got to keep Semenyo for one more week because I can't justify getting rid of Haaland and changing my team around just yet because most of the team is pretty good. So yeah, Chris Wood's going nowhere. He's got Southampton at home. Isak with Bournemouth at home. According to Fantasy Football Hub, he's still got a flag on him because obviously he was flagged going into Game Week 21. I think it'd be fine. Played in Game Week 21, of course, and got that horse. I think it'd be fine. Didn't talk about Sales in goal. I mean, I don't need to. The guy's a beast. I don't need to get rid of him. Southampton at home. I'm hoping for a nice clean sheet from Nottingham Forest. So lining up with no transfers, this is how I'm looking for Game Week 22. And like I said, potential moves. Maybe not this week, but in future weeks. And I think it's still important to talk about those. Now, before I get into the actual, well, I guess this counts as a transfer I want to make, but I really want to start warming up to a chip strategy. Now, I haven't done a chip strategy video yet because I think there is so much, well, number one, I've really struggled for time over the last week. I've been really busy with work and just even getting out these FPL videos has been tough. I'm literally recording this at 7:30 a.m. before I start work to try and squeeze it in. So it's been really tough for me to find the time to do that. And second of all, there is quite a lot of uncertainty still around like blank and double game weeks. So it's really hard to nail down the best chip strategy for me. And also, I think it'd be really hard for me to explain the best chip strategy for people just with the amount of uncertainty that's going on. But one chip that I don't think there is much uncertainty around, well, in the sense that we know when it's available, is the assistant manager. And for me, the assistant manager is kind of the closest crocodile in terms of chips. That's like a childhood analogy, but bear with. The reason I say that is because it becomes available in Game Week 24 when we've got a confirmed, nailed-on double game week between Liverpool, well, for Liverpool and Everton. So there's a potential opportunity to use it in Game Week 24. And in addition to that, I think the assistant manager chip, with the sheer amount of points that are potentially on the table with it, if deployed correctly, I genuinely think could be the strongest chip in the game. Now, just looking, again, this is a reminder of how the chip works, so you might want to skip over the scores, so it's up to you. But just looking at how you score points, say you go for, well, in fact, before we talk about the points, I think it's important to go into a potential future double game week we've got. So according to Ben Krellin, we've obviously got that confirmed double game week with Everton and Liverpool for Game Week 24, but there's also a chance that Fulham and Spurs have a double game week in 25. Unfortunately, that double in 25 is likely to be confirmed after the Game Week 24 deadline, but we should get, Ben thinks we'll get a provisional announcement ahead of the 24 deadline. And the reason I mention this is because, well, I think the assistant manager could be really powerful if you use it those 2 weeks. So say you have Arnie Slot as your assistant manager for game week 24, and then you go for, I don't know, Marco Silva or Postecoglou for 25, right? So you've got 4 fixtures there for your assistant manager. And you get 6 points for a win, 3 points for a draw, 1 point for a goal scored, 2 for a clean sheet, and then obviously extra points for if you beat a team that's higher than you in the league, right? Obviously, the Tottenham and Fulham games, you're probably not going to get all that many points for beating teams ahead of you in the table because it's sort of mid-table. But where I'm going to with this, say Arnie Slot wins 2 games, Liverpool will win, I don't know, 2 or 3-0 in all of those games. So that's 12 points for winning 2 games, and well, it doesn't even matter how many goals they concede, I guess. You get points for a clean sheet. I'm taking a long way to talk about this, but hopefully you can see my thought process. There are so many potential points available. Say he wins the 2 games, he gets 12 points for the 2 wins. Maybe he keeps 1 clean sheet, so that's 14. Goals scored, say he scores, I don't know, 2 or 3 goals per game. Well, that's a potential of 16, 17 points you could get from just 1 week of Arnie Slot assistant manager. And then you move it on to Marco Silva or Postecoglou and say they draw 1, win 1 in that double game week that they've got. Which, by the way, in terms of fixtures, looking at game week 25, Fulham it's Forest and Tottenham it's Man United and Fulham. You know, we talked about 16, 17 points if you deploy it on Slot in game week 24. You know, you could be getting around 10-ish points, I would say, for deploying it in game week 25 if there's an additional double game week. So that's potentially 25 points available for your chip. It does mean having to use a transfer on your assistant manager, though, during a period of double game week. So leading up to 24, we'll talk about that in a second, I'll probably be buying myself Liverpool players. And then for 25, you probably want to get on a Fulham and a Tottenham player, maybe, I don't know, Solanke, Son, Raul Jimenez, something like that. And you probably will eventually want to captain one of those players as well. But you see my thought process there. So my other chips, I've got my bench boost, my free hit, and my second wildcard still available. But I think they're best off used later on when we fully understand the demographic of future double game weeks. Because for the time at the moment, yeah, and my team I'm relatively happy with my team, right? I'm going to sell Haaland. That'll cost me a couple of transfers. I'll probably use it to bring in some Liverpool players, which means I think the next chip for me to use is the assistant manager, especially if we get good information that there's going to be a double in 25. All right, that was a really long-winded way of talking about how I'm going to use my assistant manager chip. Hopefully you stuck with me there and got it. This is my transfer plans video, and the whole idea behind this one is to be a little bit more rambly. And then my team selection video, which will come after the game week concludes on Friday, will be a little more solid in terms of my plans. This is kind of my thinking, and hopefully hearing around my thought process will help you. Now, with game week 24 definitely in mind, and me only having Salah in my team, I think I definitely need to get myself some Liverpool assets. And I'm going to do so by selling Erling Haaland, right? I think in game week 23, which is next game week, so I don't have to worry about it for 22, I'm likely going to sell Erling Haaland, who has Chelsea, Arsenal, Newcastle, Liverpool in his next 4. I can't really sell him ahead of Ipswich. And I think I'm going to buy myself Yohan Wissa, because after that, he's got Crystal Palace, Tottenham, West Ham, Leicester, and I think he's the best. Outside of Chris Wood, probably the best cheap striker in the game. So essentially, that frees up a bit of cash to get myself some Liverpool players. And I think if I use the assistant manager on Slot, I need 1 more Liverpool player. And I've done a little tier list here of how I rank the Liverpool assets in the game at the moment. Because, yes, I think there's some real points potential available there. But quite a lot of these players, I do actually doubt their minutes. So in terms of good options, obviously Salah, Slot and Van Dijk. I would say, for me, those 3 are the best. In terms of security of minutes, at least, I guess. Trent. Now, I don't know about you, but I would be a little bit worried about him starting both games of the double, just with his recent performance levels and the fact we have seen him benched in some games for Conor Bradley. I would ask questions as to whether he'd play both games of the double, so I put him a little bit at risk. The other one I really like, that actually saves quite a bit of money, particularly on Van Dijk, is Konate. He's 5.1 million at the moment in the game. And with the injuries that Liverpool have at centre-back, I think he probably plays both games of the double through necessity. So whilst I really like Trent, I'm probably actually not going to go for him, just because I'm a little bit worried about his minutes during that double. And then you've got what I would call the okay assets, which are essentially all of the other attackers that aren't Salah. So Jota, Gakpo and Diaz. I think they'll do well over the double. Like the likes of Jota, etc., I think will probably get sort of 100 minutes over the course of the double. But that's like just more than a full 90. So, do you know what I mean? I'm just not 100% on all of their minutes, which kind of puts me off picking them. I guess one thing that could happen between now and then is a potential injury to someone in that front line, which could push someone to be more nailed. Like, for example, if Diaz got injured, you could imagine that makes Gakpo even more likely to start. Or if, you know, Gakpo got injured, that could mean Jota's more like, you know what I mean? Something like that could happen. But right now, I just wouldn't trust them. Robertson, again, I think is even less trustworthy than Trent, who we just spoke about, could get rotated. And then Alisson, I think, is just fine. But I don't know why you'd want to load up on a Liverpool goalkeeper when you've got someone like Salah, Slot, or Van Dijk available as well. It just doesn't, it's just not massive for me. And I've got Sales in goal, who I just absolutely love. And then I think that's pretty much all of the Liverpool players on the table anyway. I'd probably avoid all the others. But I thought it'd be useful to talk about the Liverpool assets that I want to buy, because over the next couple of weeks, I'm probably going to have to buy one. Now, if I sell Erling Haaland, I mentioned back along, if I just go back to my team, this is a little bit of a ratchet video, isn't it, with all my changes. But if I look at this team and I sell Haaland for Wissa, it's going to allow me to upgrade one of my defenders to potentially Konate. We'll see if I actually come off with that. But I do think I will definitely get rid of Semenyo. Now, I'm loath to get rid of him because he's been so good. And, you know, I've kept faith with him, etc. But I do think when the option's there to bring in either Gordon or Mbeumo, I think it just, yeah, I think I've got to do it, basically. I'll definitely have the cash to do it. And it's just a case out of the two players who I prefer, really. I mean, looking at their stats over the last 5 games, they're incredibly similar. Both got, well, Gordon's got 5, Mbeumo's got 4 attacking returns. They've both taken relatively similar levels of shots in the box. Both got similar levels of XG and XA. Gordon's have twice the big chances of Mbeumo, but Mbeumo's been more creative. So when I look at the two players, it's bloody closest to who I picked, to be completely honest with you. But I do think that's an additional move I'll make. So when I get rid of Haaland in Gameweek 23, out of that Chelsea game, I'll sell him likely for Wissa, and then I'll probably bring in either Gordon or Mbeumo for Semenyo. Right now, there's 2 lines of thoughts here. I think on paper, Mbeumo just edges it because he's on penalties. But I'm not massive on the idea of having both Mbeumo and Wissa in my team, because I feel like the Brentford attack, they've been good this season, don't get me wrong, but the individuals in Mbeumo and Wissa have been a little bit, they've dropped off, both dropped off at different times. And what I wouldn't want to have is both of them in my team when they drop off, if that makes sense. So I'd like to have Gordon in there because he just feels a little bit independent to Wissa. I don't know if that point makes sense, basically. But I've noticed that at times that, obviously, there was a period of the season, I think 5 or 6 games, where Mbeumo was playing as basically a right wing back and was super deep, not really getting the chances. I think he went 4 or 5 games without taking a shot. And Wissa, did the same over a period of time as well. I just don't want to deal with that. Whereas Gordon, whenever he's in that Newcastle team, he's basically playing as a striker alongside Isak. He might not have the penalties, but he's just as nailed on as Mbeumo is. And I think, certainly in the period of form that they're in at the moment, Newcastle are a better team than Brentford. So yeah, that's my line of thought there. Not completely decided, but I'm sort of favouring Gordon if I were to pick one to replace Semenyo. Once, of course, I sell Haaland. Alright, well that's the end of the video. That felt like one of the rambliest YouTube videos I've ever made in my life. So if I lost you a little bit at times there, I apologise. But the whole idea of these videos was just try and give you my thoughts as fresh as they are, because it's my transfer plans, right? And I think people would, you know, I'm not getting cocky about my rank. I know it's pretty decent at 38k overall, right? But I'm not getting carried away with that. I'm trying to stay humble, but I think people would appreciate knowing what someone with a relatively decent rank at this stage of the season is doing with their team. So those are my thoughts. And it can be quite easy, I think, to get carried away with your chip strategy planning. And I think if your team is in a good place where you can do, then absolutely go for it. But I just think there's so much that could happen between now and even when you'd want to play some of your chips, that it's just really hard, for me at least, to nail down a plan. And I think give you any information that would be relatively useful, apart from the assistant manager, where I think there's a real opportunity to play it over the next few weeks. So yeah, we'll leave it there. If you enjoyed the video, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave me a like rating. Let me know in the comments if there's any changes you make to my team. I think ultimately this week, best suggestion is to roll and then make transfers in future game weeks to get rid of Haaland and prepare for the doubles. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the Goal to Goal channel. It should be just there on your screen. And I'll catch you in my next video.